The 1981 Calais-London offshore powerboat race is one of the most difficult races in the offshore powerboat racing calendar. The race starts at London Bridge, goes all the way down to Ramsgate, then across to Calais and back again to Ramsgate and onwards to the finish once again by Tower Bridge. Scrutineering takes place in early morning in the quiet waters of the Thames just by Putney Bridge. It is from here that the boats are launched into the River Thames, and an excellent entry of some 35 boats, classes 1, 2, 3 and 4, will be taking part in this very prestigious race. The start of this race couldn't be in a more imposing place. The first leg, 68.5 nautical miles from Tower Bridge to Ramsgate, will start at precisely 9:15. Big Ben shows just 10 minutes to go. From our position high above London, we get an excellent view of the city of London as our camera turns to see the boats now mustering upriver from the Tower Bridge. Heading this most impressive entry list in the Class 1 category is the Peter Stuyvesant entered boat from Mike Doxford and Tim Powell. That's a Class 1 Cougar catamaran. In the Class 2 category, we have Roman Sabre, the reigning European champion, John Craxford. He's, of course, got the aluminium Cougar catamaran powered by those diesel engines. Also Aquaglide, that's Robert Cook. Class 3, we've got Bentley's Oyster Bar, Barry Drinkwater. He won this race last year. Fianagin 3 to be driven by the Tolman twins, Gary and Mike. Miss Avia Watches to be driven by Ian Burney. That's a 23-foot monohull. And new to Class 3 racing, Clark Group Racing, to be driven by John Clark and Len Ferguson. They have a 26-foot Phantom. As the start time approaches, the Class 3 boats are now starting to gather speed. You can see John Craxford with the red Cougar, the Class 2 boats, smoke billowing from his diesel engines. He's had to throttle back, obviously. He's looking for a way through. And the start is given. The Class 3 boats away. Clark Racing of John Clark is in the lead, so right alongside him is Miss Avia Watches, that's Ian Burney. The Tolman twins there with their Gulf-sponsored Cougar catamaran going underneath this most imposing of starts here. Tower Bridge, the rest of this enormous field funneling through the Tower Bridge. Through goes John Craxford, he's some way back. We wait for the Peter Stuyvesant boat to come through as well. This must certainly be one of the most impressive sights to any offshore powerboat race anywhere in the world. Through comes the Peter Stuyvesant boat, the Class 1 boat, driven by Mike Doxford and Tim Powell, taking it very easy in these very early stages of this marathon event. They now head downstream past Dagenham and Wapping, and it's Clark Group just in the lead from Miss Avia Watches, driven by Ian Burney. Well up there is Gusset, the Cougar Cat of Paul Sinclair. Roman Sabre with its unusual aerofoil goes through, and the leaders very close together indeed. It's Clark Group, Miss Avia Watches, side by side. They approach the Thames barrier at Woolwich, and it's still Clark Group just ahead, as you can see. Miss Avia Watches is right alongside him. In third place is the big Class 1 boat of Mike Doxford and Tim Powell. Clark Group there, John Clark and Len Ferguson going extremely well. Mike Doxford now coming up with the very big Cougar Cat powered by a couple of Chevy engines. Through comes Mike and Gary Tolman, now in fourth place in Fianagin 3, 022 going through there. Very smooth waters at the moment in the River Thames. The first 4 boats now heading off down towards Ramsgate. Through comes Roman Sabre, number 1, with a 4-man crew in there. The Class 4's now coming through, and the rest of this large field coming through the Thames barrier, the leading Class 4 boats. The top 5 boats now heading off down the Thames estuary towards the Southend Pier. They've still got a long, long way to go. Still Clark Group leading. Now in second place it's Peter Stuyvesant. Third place, Miss Avia Watches of Ian Burney. Gusset coming up well in fourth place. Still in touch, it's Fianagin, 022 in fifth place. And look at this Gusset now coming up to challenge Ian Burney. Gusset moving into second place. Surprisingly, the little Class 3D catamaran going very well. Ahead of the Class 1 boat, Ian Burney, and number 80 there, Peter Stuyvesant. Peter Stuyvesant taking it very easy indeed. Now going past Clark Brothers, so into the lead, Gusset. In second place is still John Clark. Beautifully prepared Phantom, the Clark Group Racing boat is. Its first race here in the London Calais. Number 80 going very smoothly indeed inching up into third place now, Mike Doxford and Tim Powell. They haven't had the best of luck with their Jaguar engine boat. 022 coming up very quickly indeed. Fianagin 3, Mike and Gary Tolman are absolutely flying. They're coming past the larger Class 1 boat here, number 80. The little Class 3D boat overtaking the big Cougar catamaran. Fianagin 3 is a 25-foot Cougar, built this year, of course, by Cougar Marine. Number 80, Mike Doxford and Tim Powell. There is third, fourth and fifth places at the moment in these very early stages of the race down the very calm River Thames. Side by side with Ian Burney, now taking third place, 022, but number 80, Mike Doxford and Tim Powell, certainly opening the throttles on number 80 there, the Peter Stuyvesant Cougar catamaran. Coming past Batavia Watches is Robert Cook with Aquaglide, that's entered in Class 2. They're coming up alongside 022, that's Fianagin 3, to challenge the Tolman twins for third place. And they go past into third place. The leaders still very close together. Clark Group just holding off Peter Stuyvesant and Robert Cook there. 606, that's Paul Sinclair, now entered in Class 2. Paul Sinclair, himself a very experienced driver, had this boat in Class 3D in last year's Offshore Championship season, was very successful. Through goes Robert Cook, and there's a change there because the Peter Stuyvesant Cougar catamaran, there's something wrong with it. Past goes Clark Group, and the Cougar Cat, the Class 1 boat, is smoking badly there from the left-hand engine. Mike Doxford and Tim Powell, they're going to get out the fire extinguisher. It's smoking badly, small flames leaping from the engine bay, and they spray the fire extinguishers onto the engine. Smoke pouring out of the engine bay. Through goes Roman Sabre, John Craxford driving, but we're turning our attentions to number 80, and smoke now coming out of the second engine compartment on the right-hand side. Mike Doxford spraying more fire extinguisher into the engine bay there. That could have been a very dangerous moment. Remember, these boats are fully fueled. Some 200 gallons of fuel probably on that Cougar catamaran. A resigned look there from Tim Powell and Mike Doxford as we leave them. Obviously the first retirement in this Calais-London offshore powerboat race. No, these aren't their magnificent men in their flying machines. That's John Craxford with Roman Sabre, number 1. The aerofoil on the top of the boat makes it look as if it could fly over the water. In the rough seas of the Channel, it's going to be very interesting to see how that boat goes and how it fares in rough water. 022, Fianagin 3 going very well past one of the many tankers in the River Thames estuary. Both Mike and Gary Tolman new now to this boat. They had a second place earlier on in the season. They're going extremely well. At the moment lying in third place behind Gusset, a Class 2 boat, Clark Group, and then is 022 Fianagin. Mike and Gary Tolman there with candy all over the front of their visors, the sponsors of their Formula 1 Tolman team. Fianagin 3 is sponsored for this season by Gulf Oil, and Mike and Gary Tolman, experienced drivers. They started off in Class 3C in 1979 with Fianagin 1. Last year they had a Phantom monohull, which they were relatively successful with, gaining experience all the time. Mike and Gary Tolman flying along there in Fianagin 3. The two twin brothers certainly looking for a good finish. They must finish well into Ramsgate. Last year's race, of course, was fraught with problems for them. In the end, they had to be rescued by an RAF Manston helicopter because their boat was sinking. The boat's now going past the wrecked American boat, which sank here in 1944, and it's still full of explosives. 022, hitting rougher water now as they come out into the wide Thames estuary, heading down towards Margate and then on to Ramsgate. And now they seem to be slowing a little bit as past goes the Armstrongs. That is Aphrodisiac. Aphrodisiac there fighting for third place with 022. and Aphrodisiac flying past 022. Mike and Gary Tolman seem to be slowing here. The boat doesn't seem to be on the plane as it should be. They've obviously got some form of problems. Through goes Tuctonia, past them. Certainly their engine seems to be failing. Number 1 also going past them, Roman Sabre. John Craxford still going very well. And they've almost stopped. The Tolman twins there almost stopping. Mike Tolman now getting out, trying to get the boat up on the plane. What he's doing, he's going to the front of the boat to try and get it back up onto the plane. Obviously the boat is only on 1 engine. Very brave man. He's holding on there to the ropes, getting sprayed with water. Very dangerous situation for him. They seem to be picking these dangerous situations in the Calais-London race, especially after last year. And 022 Fianna certainly only on 1 engine at the moment. A big disappointment for the 2 twins. They were going very well in the early stages. They had in fact taken the lead as well. They will obviously try to get to Ramsgate on 1 engine, and through goes Roman Sabre now past Ian Burney and Miss Avia Watches. With the demise of the Class 1 boat, Peter Stuyvesant, the Roman Sabre boat must really be favourites for outright victory in this year's Calais-London powerboat race. A man who really drives hard, Ian Burney, number 30, Miss Avia Watches, really goes nose down, going extremely well, fighting with the wheel, as you can see. Here he is in the wake of John Craxford's Roman Sabre. Paul Watson, his co-driver, having a really bumpy ride at the moment. And they really are going extremely well, very quickly. And a very dangerous moment there for number 30. Ian Burney lying in 3rd place overall at the moment, 2nd in Class 3D. In 2nd place and leading the Class 2 at the moment, we have Gusset Paul Sinclair. But leading Class 3D and leading overall at the moment, number 37, that's Clark Group Racing. John Clark and Len Ferguson driving this beautifully prepared 26-foot Phantom. This is the team's first season in offshore powerboat racing. They've done very well even to complete this boat. They had some very late nighters. In fact, John Clark was saying that he had very little sleep before this race. Still driving hard, Ian Burney with Avia Watches, number 30. Ian with his 23-foot Phantom, nose right down. .350 horsepower from those 2 Mercury engines. And still Clark Group, John Clark there, leading well. The 2 Mercury engines developing some 350 horsepower. The boat flying across the water. Well-balanced boat. And it seems to be slowing. They certainly seem to be slowing. Clark Group is slowing. It would seem they've got some form of engine problems. Coming up behind him is Gusset, who now takes the lead. Paul Sinclair now in the lead overall on a beautiful sunny day, going towards Ramsgate after the first 68.5 nautical mile leg. 6:06 then leading Paul Sinclair in Gusset. A very serious look on Paul's face. Nearing Ramsgate the whole time, the cliffs you can see behind there. They're fairly inshore, they've got to be careful of the sandbanks. But through to win now is Gusset. He wins the first leg and the Class 2 category. In 2nd place, close behind in the 2nd Class 2 boat. In 2nd overall, that's Roman Sabre. 3rd is 01 Robert Cook, the 3rd Class 2 boat. In 4th place, that is Clark Group Racing, who've actually made it to the finish, as you can see, and they're leading the Class 3D category. So a complicated situation here as all the boats now refuel at Ramsgate. The forecast out in the channel for the second 57 nautical mile leg from Ramsgate to Calais and back again is very rough conditions. They've got a 25-mile-an-hour wind, so for the little Class 3 boats and even the Class 2 boats, it's going to be a very spectacular race. Refueling at Ramsgate was, to say the least, chaotic, and it took a long time. But we now move out into the busiest sea lane in the world, the English Channel, past the South Goodwin Lightship and past one of the many ferries that cross from Dover to Calais every day, one of the many Townsend-Thoresen boats. And a problem already for 37. They've got a problem with the throttle. That's Clark Group Racing, John Clark and Len Ferguson. They're obviously trying to fix it in the boat there. They're quite a few miles offshore and really only a speck in this English Channel in comparison to the enormous car ferries that pass them. A very dangerous situation. You can see the boat being tossed and turned by the waves. Both John Clark and Len Ferguson obviously working feverishly to repair the throttle linkage, which they seem to have in their hand. There you can see it for a fleeting moment. Nevertheless, they've done extremely well in their first race of the season. And now Roman Sabre heading back from Calais. You can see how rough it is in the English Channel. Very, very spectacular. These sort of pictures illustrate the very best in offshore powerboat racing. Going really well in these rough seas. Number 25, that's Property Growth, a 21-foot Phantom in Class 3C. They went on to win the race overall. From the point of view, it's for a Class 3 boats only, and number 25 really going extremely well in these really rough conditions. This was one of the very few Class 3C boats that made it through the 57-mile leg from Ramsgate to Calais and back again. 175 horsepower from the little Mercury engine. The crew getting thrown about there, but number 25 ultimately going on to win the 1981 London-Calais-London race. Poco Holmes is in real trouble, 03, asking for assistance. They've got no engine whatsoever, also a little Class 3 boat. The Bourne brothers in obvious difficulties. They've got no engine, and a very spectacular competitor back in the race after those throttle problems. Number 37, Clark Group Racing, both John Clark and Len Ferguson going exceptionally well in this race. They're going very fast indeed. Rough weather here in the channel, but no matter, 37 is really ploughing through the seas, literally. The boat seems to spend more time in the white surf than out of it. We're not quite sure of their navigation because they seem to be heading down more towards Bournemouth than back to Dover. But they seem to be changing their course for about the third time. We have great difficulty in our helicopter actually keeping them in our sights. And they really are going incredibly quickly. A bit of a discussion on which way to go. Len Ferguson says go left a little bit. So John Clark going left a bit, but no, I think it's going to go back towards the right because left is certainly the wrong way. Certainly a spectacular performance from these two men new to offshore powerboat racing. They obviously have a great future in the sport. As we've said before, the very distinctive colours of Clark Group Racing. The two Mercury engines racing, as you can hear. And every moment the boat seems to take a different attitude. Certainly spectacular driving by this new crew. There seems to be no stopping them. You see the engines there at the back vibrating, hitting the water very hard indeed. An unforgiving sea today, and once again those throttle problems intervene. John Clark and Len Ferguson, this time their race may well be round, but they've put up an excellent performance in this Calais-London race, which of course they led in the early stages down to Ramsgate. 03 Poker Holmes has now been taken in tow by a British yacht, and the hovercraft which comes out of Ramsgate, Hoverloyd, have stopped to see if they can give assistance. We were very surprised to find out that RAF Manston knew nothing of this powerboat race, which would seem a very dangerous situation, especially in these sort of conditions, which were very blustery, causing the seas to be quite high for these little Class 3 C and D offshore powerboat racers. The hovercraft, realizing that Poker Holmes had been taken in tow, makes its way back to Ramsgate, and it's going to be a long time before 03 gets onto British soil because they're going very slowly behind Angelique, the yacht that's taken them in tow. This year's Calais-London offshore powerboat race once again proving a really difficult race. Number 47 Matchmaker, it's a Class 3C boat, a 21-foot Phantom powered by one Mercury engine, 175 brake horsepower. Number 47, they're going extremely well. They're actually going out towards Calais, so they were a late starter. A lot of the boats, both in Class 3D and 3C, decided not to make the channel crossing because they thought it was too rough. Number 47 obviously doing his best through these very difficult conditions. This boat, another very well-prepared boat. Number 96 is Psycho, driven by Peter Skinner. This little Class 3C boat also went on the very long cross-channel leg and finished third in the Class 3C class, a very good achievement for Peter Skinner. Taking things here a little bit easy, they realize they've got very rough seas to contend with. Nevertheless, as you can see, they're still flying out of the water. Psycho then, Peter Skinner. This is a very small boat, only an 18-foot Phantom, so they really have to be very careful against these very rough seas. And back to Ramsgate the boats come. Once again, a bit of a shambolic refueling going on there. It's taken a long time. In fact, the Class 3D boats didn't start off from Ramsgate until 5:45. Leading overall was Roman Sabre Class 2. Both the other Class 2 boats were really out of the reckoning. Gusset, who had engine problems, as did Robert Cook with Aquaglide. But we're now going to take a look at the leading cruiser class and also both some Class 3C and Class 4. Number 28, Have No Fear, which is another 18-foot Phantom going extremely well here. Powered by the Mercury 175 horsepower engine. Have No Fear, literally having no fear, flying out of the water. Spectacular stuff from this boat. Many of the Class 3D boats, the larger category, didn't complete the Ramsgate, Calais Ramsgate leg, so they're going to be out of the reckoning for positions. Splashdown is a cruiser class. They only had to go from London to Ramsgate and back again. P4 also going very well. Now we have a little Class 4E, that is Wheels of London. That's only a 16-foot Martian. Have No Fear, literally coming straight past Wheels of London, as does Splashdown, a little Class 4 boat going extremely well in considerably rough conditions for that size, a little 16-foot boat. Deep Fresh, number 27, being driven by Lady Aaron. This is a 23-foot Hunton, a comparatively easy ride for the cruiser class. They in fact have to carry cutlery on board so that they can be eligible for that cruiser class. P18, they won the cruiser class, and would you believe it, in the middle there is radio disc jockey Mike Smith. Mike obviously enjoying his ride. There he is in the middle. We follow right behind them. I think Mike's finding it a little bit too rough. The seas coming up the estuary still rough, and away goes their map. So one only hopes that they're going to find the right markers. The crew really bobbing up and down, but they won the cruiser class in this 25-foot Wellcraft. The boat going very well here. 04, a little Class 3B boat. This is powered by one of the smallest engines in the race, a little 85 horsepower Yamaha engine, but they're going incredibly well, very quickly indeed. 04, Amakril, leaders in the Class 3B category in offshore powerboat racing. A nice smooth ride. And our helicopter heads up towards the Thames estuary, and we wait for the overall leader. Here he is, number 1, Roman Sabre, the reigning European Class 2 champion, the aluminium Cougar catamaran powered by those 2 diesel engines that in fact turn out 840 horsepower. No, that's not someone down the air intake. They're obviously checking something on the back of that boat as they go past the refineries on Canvey Island. Roman Sabre then heading up towards victory in the 1981 London, Calais London offshore powerboat race. And so the overall winner of the 1981 London Calais London race heads towards the famous Tower Bridge finish. John Craxford, the former world champion, the reigning European Class 2 champion, in the Cougar catamaran goes under Tower Bridge and wins this year's marathon event. But let's not forget that